My team and I were just sitting down reviewing the cases we watched be reviewed by the Board of Pardons last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it was truly a slugfest. The Board of Pardons reviewed approximately 169 cases. Now, all of my statistics are estimated. They're not officially from the board. They're not double-checked anywhere. They're the result of my team scribbling down, thoughts and votes as they're coming in at the end of the morning and the end of the day. But the general takeaway is that the board recommended about 124 applicants out of 169 cases that they heard. And that comes out to be about a 73% recommendation case. I call them approvals. So that would be like a 73% approval rate that the board voted sufficiently to recommend to the governor that he issue a pardon. Now, the governor doesn't have to do anything, and in fact, it's rumored that the governor has been signing 70 to 80% of the cases recommended to him by the board, and if that's the case, then darn near 100 plus people should be recommended for given a pardon by the governor, and they'll have their cases destroyed as if they never happened. So I just had some thoughts about, that percentage rate. There have been previous public sessions where the board was tending sort of closer to 80%, but now they seem to sort of be settling in on about 7 out of 10 people, which means that there are 30% of the people that are not moving forward, which is going to be heartbreaking for them. But in general, I guess the main takeaway is it's a real process. It really works. The board does a real thorough review and they vote. And in these particular cases, 7 out of 10 of the cases in general were recommended to the governor for a pardon. So Pennsylvania is definitely taking the record-clearing pardon granting process seriously. And it's really nice to practice in that area. Just quick takeaway the first day. Well, we know there were 25 excused cases. Now, they were excused because the board decided to just vote unanimously on all of them. So all 25 cases were approved in the excused vote list. So that was 100% on that list. Then the morning list, they ran about 16 recommendations out of 23. That's 70%. On Wednesday in the afternoon, they recommended 18 out of 23. That's about 78%. Thursday morning, they recommended about 17 out of 24 for about 70%. I guess we missed 3 of the votes. Anyway, 17 were recommended out of 21 cases that we caught. That was about 80% of the vote. Thursday in the afternoon, they recommended 19 out of 25. That's 76%. Now, Friday in the morning was a pretty tough day because they recommended 14 out of 24, which I calculate at 58%. I think it's the lowest I've seen it go. And then finally, Friday afternoon, 15 out of 25 were recommended for 60%. So if you take the real numbers and you just average them out or add them up, it comes out to recommendations of 73% approximately. And so that's what I think about that. Now, some of the questions that the board was asking, I heard numerous times, everybody wants to know, have you had any contact with law enforcement since the criminal conduct, since the criminal conviction? And what they really want to hear is no. If they hear about a traffic ticket, I don't think that bothers them. If you go to another state, though, and you get a misdemeanor conviction, I think that's a problem. They want to know about any contact with law enforcement. And as I've said before, they do seem to have deep resources about where they can get police information. Also, heard one of the board members ask, how long has it been since you last blacked out? And so in that particular case, they were asking about a long-term drinking problem that originally back in the day led to blacking out. What they wanted to hear was that the person hasn't drank since that initial date and time, and whether that's true or not. So that's my takeaways about the most recent public session. Now, this was the second public session of this year, And I don't have statistics if you add them both together, but the real news is that Pennsylvania Board of Pardons has been reviewing hundreds of applications in the first half of the year and recommending about 70% of them. So those are hundreds of people that will probably be receiving pardons from the governor. And so that's truly a redemptive process moving forward. I also received a question about gun rights for your spouse. If I have a drug possession case or a felony case, or if I'm not allowed to have a gun or a firearm in the house, we got a question about whether or not my spouse is allowed to have a firearm. And the answer is yes, she is, or he is, but it's also tricky. Your constitutional right to possess a firearm flows to you, and a conviction that takes away your qualification flows to you. That's your disqualification. There's nothing in the Constitution that says if I can't have a firearm, then my wife can't have one, because that would actually be offending her constitutional rights. Your constitutional rights flow to you. They don't flow to your wife. So now for the tricky part. So your wife's allowed to possess a firearm, and you might live together. And so the question is, if you're not allowed to possess it and she is, and maybe you're worried about a break-in or something like that, where is it kept? Well, it should be kept on her side of the bed. The only way you could get into trouble is if the Commonwealth somehow could prove that you possessed the firearm or you used it as yours. You exercised control over the firearm. One way to do that would be if you took the thing to the range target hunting. You can't do that. You're allowed to go with your wife while she target shoots, but you're not allowed to possess it. At the point where you're exercising control over that firearm, you are illegally possessing it. Gets into the very complicated analysis of somebody breaks into the house. Maybe the guy wants to get the gun from the wife since the guy's the defender, and he ends up maybe shooting somebody, and then law enforcement comes in and he tells the truth and says he shot the intruder, and then he gets into trouble because he wasn't to possess a firearm. And then the Castle Doctrine would lead to a defense of that case. They could prove he possessed it, but was for the purpose of defending himself and his wife. So at that point, it's basically a life or death situation. You're doing what you think you need to do. But no, your wife's constitutional rights are not taken away because yours are affected by a disability for having some kind of disqualifying offense. That was a very long-winded answer, so I'm sorry about that. We also received a question about, I guess we want to respond to it. There was a question about, does a person still need a pardon if they fill out an 18 U.S.C. 925C application? Now, 18 U.S.C. is a statute that refers to the 18 United States Code, so it's a federal statute that would have to do with gun possession or gun ownership. And the answer to that is really clear, because I don't care what happens with the 18925. I don't think it would go through. If you have a disqualifying Pennsylvania conviction, anybody looking for your rights is going to go to the Pennsylvania State Police Criminal Repository, which is where your record is kept, which is where they're going to find whatever is on your record, also whatever needs to be pardoned, so that you can get your rights back. So even if you pass an 18 U.S.C. 925C application, that doesn't affect the fact that in Pennsylvania, if you have a disqualifying offense, it would be illegal for you to have a firearm in Pennsylvania. And as I tried to say, I'm not an expert on federal law or 18 U.S.C. 925C, but if it requires any kind of background qualification, I think it wouldn't be passed because of the disqualifying Pennsylvania offense. Now, the flip side of that is if a person goes through and gets the pardon and removes the disqualifying offense by getting a pardon from the governor, and the record is then expunged, could you pass an 18 U.S.C. 925? Yes. Would all of your rights be returned to you? Yes. If the Pennsylvania conviction is the only thing that's disqualifying you, then removing that disqualifying offense, all your rights come back as if it never happened. The state police will erase or destroy their criminal repository information, which is where the FBI gets their information, which is where everybody gets Pennsylvania information. And so yes, all your rights will be restored if you get the pardon from the governor, and that's what we do. So that's all my thoughts about last week and some other related matters. Let's go out and have a good June 9th. Thank you.